Hey, Chief. About a little history, Chief. Cicero watched exhausted as the edifice he had laboriously constructed during the previous 6 months was gradually demolished. In early June he wrote to Decimus Brutus, "What's the use? Believe me, Brutus. As one not given to self-deprecation, I am a spent force. The Senate was my weapon, and it has fallen to pieces." He realized that for all his struggles the Constitution was dead and power lay in the hands of soldiers and their leaders. This is very effective. Lepidus, claiming he had been forced into it by his men switched allegiance to Antony, and was followed by Plancus, probably Plancus, and then Pollio. Plancus and Pollio. I wish I'd named my sons that. The supposedly loyal army in Africa was recalled to Rome, a desperate measure, for its commander Titus Sextius was a Caesarean, and a legion of new recruits was formed. Frantic appeals were sent to Brutus in Macedonia to come home, but he knew better than to accede to them. He still hoped to avoid civil war. This was why he was keeping Caius Antonius alive as a hostage, despite Cicero's obdurate appeals for his execution. He knew that safety lay in joining forces with Cassius, and marched off eastwards to meet him. An invasion of Italy would be practicable only with their combined forces. For the time being, the Senate was on its own. Throughout July, Cicero bombarded Brutus fruitlessly with letters begging him to intervene. He continued bravely, or obstinately, to defend his policy. "Our only protection is with this lad," he insisted, but in the end he was compelled to admit that he'd failed. "Caesar's army," meaning Octavian's, "which used to be excellent," in other words loyal, "is not only no help, but forces us to ask urgently for your army. Octavian's likely defection from the Republican cause was clear enough for any intelligent observer to predict, hence the appeals for help." However, Cicero must have felt that he had no choice but to assume the... What's the right position for reading history to a baby while he's falling asleep? Where was I? However, Cicero must have felt that he had no choice but to assume the trustworthiness until he had definite evidence otherwise, trustworthiness of Octavian. The two men stayed in touch. Brutus was unimpressed by Cicero's explanations, and when he saw an excerpt from a letter he had written to Caesar passed on to him by Atticus, he delivered a magisterial rebuke. "You thank him on public grounds in such a fashion, so imploringly and humbly, I hardly know what to write. I am ashamed of the situation, of what fortune has done to us, but write I must. You commend our welfare to him, better any death than such welfare. It is a downright declaration that there has been no abolition of despotism, only a change of despot. Read over your words again, and then dare to deny that these are the pleadings of a subject to his king." I think it worked.